webinar, I want to have a lot of space and room for our prominent guest speakers and panelists. So welcome to the Rennan Hui Silicon Valley Center. I am the director for the center, and I'm an academic, and I'm also a practitioner from background. I've been spending over 3 decades now researching the new management model for the digital age. And this has been my quest for almost 30 years, believe it or not. The purpose of this new center that started was established approximately 1.5 years ago is to do research and also to develop and offer what we call the next generation management, both in the form of webinars and courses. And I think one of the difference that we want to emphasize between us and many others are that it's scientifically based. We use research and we try to avoid individual opinions and be too much influenced by strong opinion makers, but be scientifically based. We're also inspired by the forerunners and the leading models out there. And of course, Rennan Hui is one of the models that has inspired us a lot. And that's the reason for the name, Rennan Hui, the Silicon Valley Center. The focus of this webinar is enterprise transformation. And transformation affects, as you might know or understand if you haven't started the journey yet, the whole business model. And this makes transformation so hard and so complex. It's a very complex and also a systemic phenomenon. It's not a linear engineer process. It's not an A to a Z, a stepwise approach. If you change one small component in your organization, then that will affect all other components and so on. So it's a very complex and systemic phenomenon. With me, I have some of the best people I could find on the area on business transformation. I have 2 professors, Professor Benjamin Laker from the UK, and he will present himself shortly, and also Professor Bill Fisher. But I also wanted to add 2 practitioners, 2 people, industrial experts that have been doing successful transformation already and that will share shortly their experience and lesson learned. And those are Antonio Boadas from GE Appliances and Jochen Goser from Bosch Power Tool. I also have some specially invited guests. With me, Viren Shah from GE Appliances. Viren is the Chief Digital Officer, and I think is in the same position as maybe many of you are in a Chief Digital position, responsible for making transformation happen. So the format for this webinar will be in the format of an interview, and I'm going to ask some key questions, and I actually will start with Viren, that also have been a previous guest in some other courses that we have been provided. So Viren, you are in the middle of a huge enterprise transformation yourself, and you are in the position of Chief Digital Officer. What could you share from your point of view, the challenges to be in your position and the journey you have to do, and how webinars or courses like this could actually help you to succeed in this journey?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for inviting me, Annika, to share my experiences, but most importantly, how these courses have helped me personally. You know, the easiest way I would begin, where most of us are challenged, is we believe there is an end to our transformation. And I think that one of the biggest things you learn through these conversations is, well, there is no end. It's just continuous. So if you're trying to define an end to a transformation, I think that's probably where I feel most of us, including me, was not thinking it correctly. The few things, if you ask me what I really like, so, and, Antonio and I work for the same organization, so he'll share some cool things of what we are doing on the transformation. So I won't elaborate on that. But most importantly, few of my personal learnings from conversations like this. Most importantly, we have people who are just the visionaries and the thought leaders in this space that allow us to even say, the one thing is like the NABC approach. Where is the white space? Like transformation is not just whatever you're doing, something better. Transformation is also involves radical change over time. So it's like, how do you find those white spaces? So that was a great thing, the organization that actually sold Siri to Apple that I learned from. Do we even have a story? Because we all want a happy ending at the end of the day. And do we have a story? And how do you tell your stories? Which was another great lesson I learned. It's like, hey, do you even have a story? And story is very aspirational, and that's what you enjoy about stories. And I think it's easy for everybody to comprehend. So that was great for me to learn. The other piece is, what is required? So in today's world, most organizations are very focused on growing themselves vertically or horizontally. But co-creation is a very important aspect if you want to grow exponentially. And that's how I feel exponential growth. It was very thought-provoking for me personally to say, oh, that's how exponential growth will come along. The one thing from John Hagel is like, how do you, from core to edge to the core? And how do you start thinking about new edges, which goes back to my white space conversation, which goes back to my storytelling. But it's like, how do you create this new edge? And the Leon Fung example was just amazing, is how they bought Ralph Lauren. And, they made a big aspect from it. But if I'm correct, it was Ralph Lauren. Is that fair, Hanika?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, how do you create this new edge, which becomes the new core? And that, to me, the whole 21st century management principle that I hope, will probably be talked about, comes into play. It's like, but how do you do it? And I know quite a few experts on this call have practiced it. We learned from Bosch, we learned from Volkswagen, we learned from so many other companies of how they are applying this new management approach, agile approach, but most importantly, value creation. And so that's my, long answer to your very simple question. But I truly believe, if I was just bucketing it out, co-creation, identifying white spaces, then building your story of how you're going to take this new edge, make it a new core, and then use 21st century management to truly do the transformation. So that has been the benefit I have received from attending something like this.
It seems that you got a number of tools that you could reuse in your organization and your work pretty much immediately.
Yes. Yeah. And I've been able to use them, apply them to small or large extent.
Thank you for sharing. And so let's go over to Professor Bill Fisher, because we discussed business transformation, and based on some of the other courses that Byron was referring to, we found that there's a need to deep dive into transformation in itself, because it's so complex as a phenomenon. And it's so there doesn't seem to be a blueprint. But maybe we should sort of back the tape and just ask ourselves, is there really a need for transformation? Is there a need for transformation? Why should we transform? And are there, Byron just mentioned this management model for the 21st century. Are there new management guidelines, management principle that force us to transform right now?
I think they're emerging, Annika. I think that there's no reason to believe that the future will be anything like the past. I mean, we're all sitting here watching this and we're all masters of the uncertain, but we're heading into the unknown, and the tools that we relied on to be successful when things were pretty familiar, but we had variance to manage. And we're making a transition to a world where very little is familiar and where we have to seek out new areas of expertise and new partners. That's going to require new knowledge, and new leadership skills, new organizations, new business models. I think transformation, if you look at the organizations that do it well, it's ambitious dreams, but it's also, really granular details. And I think one of the things that you get from a situation like this, a course like this, is an appreciation of both. It's understanding what others have done and has worked or hasn't worked. And I think that's the real benefit.
Yeah, so learn from others. And are there, coming back to those management principles of the 21st century, could we continue with a bureaucratic, tall organization with the 15 layers of managers?
Well, I don't think that works. It doesn't learn effectively and it doesn't move fast. And so I think we need to understand who we are as an organization and what we stand for. And we need to think about where are the goals that we want to achieve. If I refer back to Hire, Rendon, you've mentioned that already, that's a successful model. One of the things we see there is that they have a set of principles which are quite effective, which have guided them over the past 40 years in an experimental fashion. And I think we can learn from. Let me just show you those very, very quickly. I think that if you think about what Hire has done and what all of us can learn from them, even if we interpret it differently, is first of all, you need to get closer to the customer. The customer's expectation about experience is changing faster than ever before. If you're not close to the customer, that's not going to work. And the best way to do that is to really rely on the most inexhaustible source of energy we have, and that's the entrepreneurial spirit within the organization. Bureaucratic organizations suppress that. And so how do we free up that entrepreneurial spirit to serve the customer better? And finally, how do we share the value with everyone created so that we really fuel co-creation, not only in the present, but keep it going into the future as well. So that's a set of 3 principles, which I would argue are not typical of what you see in most organizations, has really served Hire very, very well. And it's the sort of material you can learn when you listen to people like Jochen and Antonio and Benjamin and all of these are people who have looked at other organizations and will give you a broader view of how that works. I think it all goes back to what Peter Drucker says. We're trying to create and keep a customer. Who can we learn from that's done that well?
Right. And isn't the challenge that we talk about customer experience and customer focus, but this time it's much more with digital technology. We talk about mass customization. We talk about one-to-one relationship with every single user, and it could be millions of them.
Right.
On a daily basis, more or less.
And not only looking at them as possible targets for bringing offerings to market, but also looking at them as sources of ideas, as truly co-creators, whether they're formerly just suppliers, now they're colleagues, or whether they're customers, now they're co-creators. That's a very different way of looking at the world.
Right. Okay, thank you for sharing that, Professor Fisher. So let's go over to Professor Laker now, and switch the perspective and focus to the transformation in itself. I did my personal conclusion. This is a very complex and systemic phenomena. It's hard to find a blueprint for it, but I would like to hear your view on what do we actually know about an enterprise transformation. We are not talking about a single process here or a single department. We talk about a full enterprise transformation, maybe affecting the whole business model. what do we know about this kind of phenomena?
Well, we know that we don't know lots about it to begin with, and I think part of that is because if you were undertaking a transformation, say 15, 20 years ago, there is a finite end state. Or for those of you who are familiar with business process re-engineering, you would have your current state or the as is state, and then you would have your future state, which is commonly known as the to be state. And typically transformation, by the time you arrive into that future state, it is indeed the state that you wish to operate in at that time period. But of course, the challenge now is, because of the complexity and the ambiguity in the world, it is somewhat difficult to anticipate or even project what the future state is. So therefore, transformation and the motivation of said transformation cannot sufficiently prepare an organization for what is to come, because it's not possible to understand what that looks like. What you can do, however, is to create enough flexibility, sufficient agility, responsiveness within an organization that no matter what that future state is, there will be sufficient readiness within that organization. And of course, the way that one can do that is no longer to see the organization as a singular entity. And if we use a sailing analogy, it's very difficult to turn a cruise liner or a battleship. If you have a small speedboat, it's much easier. And so rather than having a singular corporate size institution, the adoption of an ecosystem with many moving component parts, each able to respond to market demands, respond to markets, respond to regulatory issues, enables the organization to live, to breathe the world in which it resides itself within, which every day is transforming. I published a piece this week on the metaverse. If you look at what's happening within the metaverse, within NFTs, within blockchain, there is significant steps being taken both within business lives and personal lives to virtual real estate. Virtual real estate at the moment is costing, in some instances, more than actual, what I would call real estate. But of course, real estate isn't a technical word, because of course the virtual real estate is still real. But you understand my use of the lexicon here. And so how long will it be before our entire workplace exists within the metaverse? How long will it also be where workers' motivation is purely to exist within a working world that resides within a metaverse? And how are organizations going to be prepared for such change? We're not talking about 30, 40 years into the future. We may be talking about 2 and 3 and 5. So how do you prepare yourself for that? Only by adopting an ecosystem, one that is living, that is breathing, able to ascertain data, information, market trends. And so far, the best way to do that is the management philosophy of Rendon Hai, because that is what promotes a living ecosystem as such, rather than a traditional corporate, hierarchical, top-down, very heavy, very controlled organization.
So when you talk now, I cannot help myself to associate to how information technology and the evolution there have been to modularization. It seems like the old sort of information systems, they were all more or less static and very hard to change, and then modularization came and you could actually update it more easily. And it seems that we're heading the same way regarding organization. to modelize different kind of, or maybe value creation activities into different kind of actors, smaller units, playing in ecosystems. So, and you mentioned a number of things here that we heard before, that there is, we don't really know, it's uncertain the end goal of the organization of the specific business. So we have to be prepared, and we have to embed our capability of being flexible, responsive, adaptable, and so on. And you talked about metaverse. It seems, you know, complex. I think I was right there. It seemed complex, and it seemed to be, you know, where do you start? I mean, if I would be, you know, responsible for my transformation of my company now, I would feel, my God, where do I start, and how do I actually succeed, and how should I do this, and where should I head? Where is the North Star? What should I head towards? So why don't we go over to Jochen and Antonio, because you've been there, you've done that, and you actually succeeded. I think we can actually, I mean, you are very humble people, both of you, but I would say that you actually succeeded. So who of you want to start to tell sort of a little bit about your situation and what you actually did? Antonio?
I can, if can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, beautiful. And I apologize for not connecting earlier, so I don't know how to use my computer. And this is part of my transformation, I'm learning how to use computers. We have learned a lot in this process, and I can tell you how our life looks like right now, but I can tell you how our life looked like before. And I came up thinking about this seminar and what we can talk in our next seminar is, what are the 10 things, my top 10 things that helped me to understand that we needed to transform, that it was about time to change things, because we were so comfortable with the former situation that we couldn't even realize how bad we were and where things were heading to. So here are my top 10s. The first one, when your org chart looks like a Christmas tree, and that you are ready to remove it, okay? It is already late January, early February. It is time to get rid of it. This is the first signal. The second one, when you are invited to meetings, to align what you're gonna say in the next meeting. So the meeting of the meeting before the meeting, that's called bureaucracy. Third one, when you spend more time building PowerPoint than actually creating projects, which means you're dressing up the monster to show it to somebody else who eventually will make a decision. That's the third one, is very painful. The fourth one, when your budget is defined and approved by a finance person. I love the finance people, but they know nothing about my business. When I have money landing on my desk and I don't know where the money is coming from, we have an issue, because this money is not connected to my results. This money is not connected to my user. This money is connected to a central budget that was defined by a invisible hand, put it that way. Number 5, when you feel that you need to lobby your HR director, your HR partner, to make sure that you have a good career in this company. Means that somebody is defining that your progress is not being defined by the market, by the user, by your results. It's by a human being that knows nothing about what you do and your performance. Number 6, when passion and work are not in the same sentence. In other words, when you go back home and you can't explain what you did today, because it's simply so boring that your family, your kids will walk away from you and you'll be alone again. Number 7, when tenure in a company is more important than performance. It's like, yes, so he or she is fantastic. He or she has been in the company for 25 years. No one knows what this person does, but she's there and he is there, and they're making more money than you, who are delivering and performing extremely well. Number 8, when playbooks are considered sacred books, when you're worshiping a practice from the past because it worked in 1962. My friend, that doesn't work in the metaverse, and but honestly, we have tons of these wonderful books on our shelves. Number 9, when diversity and inclusion is a project, it's a program. It's not a reality. It's not the way we work and live. The moment we embrace diversity and inclusion is that when we discover that we're all human. And this is when we are unleashing the human potential. And the last one, number 10, is when we treat our employees as numbers, as parts of a machine, instead of individuals who have values, passion, who could become entrepreneurs. When you see the world through these 10 lessons that I've learned over the last few years, you'll realize that probably it is about time to transform. It is about time to do something different. And as a follow-up from what have been said before about Rendon Hui, I believe Rendon Hui is probably the most human business philosophy you can encounter anywhere. This is a place where individuals want to realize their unique value. And that's one of the principles. We want to be valued. We want to create value. We want to become entrepreneurs, which is a different and interesting thing. When and let me interject here for a second on the working from home discussion that we're having around the world. When you're an entrepreneur, you don't need anyone to tell you when and where you need to work. It could be at the office, could be in your garage, could be wherever you are, because you are focused on delivering your goals, delivering and serving consumers or users. So under the Rendon Hui philosophy, we have a solution. You are an entrepreneur, you decide. And you decide what is best for the business, what is best for you, and what works for you as an individual. It allows you to break down the company into small pieces, because entrepreneurs will be driving change, driving smaller ventures, and will be fully accountable for the results. And you will end up being really zero distance to your consumers and users. And to what you were saying, Annika, is zero distance is not only a word, it is a philosophy in which you and your user, you and your consumer become one. That's the source of co-creation. That's the source of energy for the future. So my top 10s, some of my learnings, shut up right now, but I'm very passionate about this. It is about time to transform. And I bet you work in an organization who has a Christmas tree. And it is about time to get rid of it and create something totally different.
So this is really interesting. I want you to send me that list, because I do think that having this kind of list of warning signs could be a great starter. I mean, if you are checking 8 of the 10, it's definitely time to transform, right? Fantastic. Thank you for sharing. And Jochen, you come from a whole other company, from a whole different country, with a different national culture, and somewhere you ended up with sort of a similar conclusion that you wanted to transform the company, and you did it. Do you want to share any lesson learned from your journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think what is so interesting about if you go into that direction is that you find actually very, very different people, very different organizations and different industries, but you find a very common values and beliefs. And when you check on how could you do a transformation successfully, I think that the initial question is actually that probably everybody's asking, what real problem are we trying to solve, right? So, I mean, power tools, we asked ourselves the question a couple of years ago, 5-6 years ago. Basically, it comes down to, are we close enough to our users, being in a very much consumer goods retail business with power tools? Are we innovative enough? Is this really driving how we see ourselves? And are we fast and flexible? So these were really the problems that we tried to solve. And then you set out to answer these questions, and then you look in your eyes, and if you're humble enough, like you just said, it's not me, it's not one person, it's the only way to tap into reaching that potential is by tapping into the associates, right? To really ask themselves, okay, you're there at the front line, you deal with customer complaints, you see the Amazon 5-star ratings of our products. What should we do next? You are very close to the market. How can we empower you? How can we listen to you, that we co-create something together that is totally new? And that's actually, I think, a very important message that we heard already 2 or 3 times, this co-creation and this humbleness to say, yes, there is a central project that we established, but it's so much about the we than anybody singular. right? So we need to involve a lot of potential to be even slightly prepared for what's coming or what might come. And then the next point I would like to highlight, and I mean, successful transformation, it's kind of you that you mentioned that we seem to be successful from the outside. We feel very proud what we are achieving, but there are always these impediments, roadblocks on the journey. But I think it's also very important to start at the beginning with some strong principles. And I think Bill Fisher just showed at the beginning the Rand and Hay principles. Perhaps you come up with 2 or 3 more. It should be digestible. I think for us, we came down to around 5, 6. Some were touching the organization to say we need less hierarchy in terms of people reporting to people. That has something to do with empowerment of people. We also wanted to make sure that's a core element of our organization to have permanent cross-functional teams, because we didn't want anybody with a functional background, for example, in marketing, assigned to a project together with engineers, and after the project meeting going back to the marketing department complaining about these engineers who don't know the markets, or an engineer going back to his department and complaining about the marketeers. We want them to be forming a new home to say, you're a different background, but you're responsible for driving business. You're responsible for bringing out innovations. And you're actually the guys who make the decision which products to launch, which products to stop, and to think also innovative in user problems. Because coming from a power tools market, the real problem is not that we want our users to have a drill driver, to have a hammer. They want to have a hole in a wall, or they want to have something broken down, for example, right? So think innovative. What really do we want to solve as a user need? And I think that the real important message here is if you tap into that potential of aligning with different companies, share out, find models that fit your principles, then you really can create your own toolbox. And I think that's something which is even more powerful, because it's something that you create on your own, right? So you have toolboxes. I mean, if I have good exchanges with Antonio, with GE, we see a lot of commonalities. We can share them, because the hard part is not to learn about them. It's not rocket science. The actual hard part is like getting your organization behind and execute on them. So this collect your own toolbox for transformation, I think, is a key aspect that, I mean, you're always fostering in your sessions, in your courses. And I think that's something which really participants can also get out of that. And then last but not least, I want to remember, just when we spoke about it, it came to my mind with this always, also Benjamin Laker said it, with this goal on finish something, and that's the dream to come true. I think we need to be also very empathetic about what is, and I don't want to become philosophical, but at the end of the day, if you see yourself as an organization, the question is not what is your goal, and once you have achieved it, the question is actually, how do you stay in the game, right, or perhaps in a new game in 5 years from now? And I think that's really important, that you question, it's more an infinite game than rather win over everybody. And I think if we're honest to ourselves, that's also our personal journeys that we envision. We are not aiming for the ultimate goal, which might be disappearing from Earth. It's kind of enjoying the journey, right? And make the most out of it. And I think that's something where these principles help you a lot, where you empower and try to tap the human potential that's in your company.
Thank you. It was very valuable recommendation and tips here. So you mentioned a number of things that I definitely support. I mean, you mentioned that you defined the problems that you wanted to solve. You thought it was important to co-create the solution together, to involve you call them associate. In the Rand and Huyi model, they talk about entrepreneurs or makers. No one is talking about employees anymore. Employees, that word is gone. But to co-create, to actually get people involved. And you also mentioned the importance of principles. And here I cannot help myself referring back to Edgar Schein. And for you that are in this field, I'm sure you all know about Edgar Schein, the more or less father and founder behind corporate culture. I had the benefit to work with him and his son now on some pieces of work. And Edgar Schein is definitely very blunt and direct, and say that you cannot engineer this kind of transformation. It's like Jochen said, you have to more or less, start working layer by layer, and get the assumptions there that this is a new belief, that this is necessary to happen. And then to get people involved, and get them on the train together with you, and then changing the artifacts, the actual technical system, like the design of the organization, or the compensation model, or the titles you use, that is emphasizing this new set of beliefs. And it's a never-ending story. That make it even harder that we are living in this very volatile and uncertain world. So when you're done what you thought was your transformation, then you realize that you have to continue. So you have to build in those capability to continuously be able to transform and change, even if it's minor sometimes and more disruptive at sometimes. I think it was very valuable lesson learned from all of you. We have one more person with us here, Henrik Linnet, that just came in from Ericsson. And I happen to know Ericsson a bit as a Swede. I admire the company very much. And I bet you are in a transformation as a company yourself as well right now. And you also had been with us and in our community for a while. Anything that you would like to tell us about the transformation matter, and also how can courses or webinars like this actually help you as a practitioner in that position?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot, Annika. I mean, one reflection that I had made several times and shared with my colleagues as well, who also will be and has been attending the courses after I did, has been that the combination of as in a way, as Jochen said here, you get a possibility to collect the toolbox. You get a fantastic introduction to different areas, call it insights, more on the conceptual dimension perhaps, but then in combination with the more you could say hands-on examples from the different companies that also participate and talk about their story. I think that has been extremely useful for me, trying to say okay, what is our situation, what are our challenges, also in a way challenging my own way of thinking. It's okay, why haven't I thought of that? Well, for various reasons you get, you say, focused in a certain direction, and I think this has been a way of in a way challenging my line of thinking, our line of thinking when it comes to the transformation steps that we are taking. So I think that's on a very high level the value that I see you get from this. And then I like the format a lot. I mean, it's 12 hours, it's 3 sessions, but a lot of value coming out of the sessions, I would say. You can read a lot of books for sure, and that's what you definitely have to do as well. But I think this is a very refreshing way of acquiring new knowledge as well.
Maybe a little bit like a shortcut to navigate in all this billions of literature, articles, books out there that all claim that they know and have the truth. Right.
Exactly.
So I think it's time for us to go over to a general Q&A, and please involve Henrik from Ericsson as well, Professor Bill Fisher, Professor Benjamin Laker, Antonio, and Jochen from GA and Boch. So let us know what questions you might have. You also got the link if you do want to take the course. As Henrik said, it's only 12 hours. It's 4 hours per session over 3 weeks. And you will be able to meet experts, discuss with them, discuss with peers, and be able to create a toolbox in your transformation journey based on all the tools and methods that you will learn during the course. Let's see, we have a raised hand here. No, it was me. Okay, we have Q&A. Let's see if we have some here. Okay, so Sonia, you were first out in the Q&A. How is the hire example different from a successful implementation of the Shingo model? That was a sophisticated, very complex question. Okay, anyone that can answer that question? How is hire example different from the successful implementation of the Shingo model? Yeah, I think we have Professor Fisher taking the challenge.
So let me see what I can do with this. I think that, look, what you really need is guiding. I'm really absolutely convinced guiding principles are critical, particularly because as we try to move faster, we have to move faster in a complex organization in many different places than just at the top. And if you're going to provide more and more autonomy throughout the organization, you have to be, I think senior management has to be persuaded that everybody understands where we're going and how we're going to get there. So I think the use of principles to relieve anxieties over freeing up decision-making autonomy is absolutely critical, and also guarantees some degree of coherence. I think Shingo is a way of doing it. Rendan Hui is also a way of doing it, but what Rendan Hui is really more of an organizational transformation approach rather than just the generation of guiding principles. And it's also done at, we're trusting people to use their own means and their own processes and their own inclinations to do it. So I think, as I understand Shingo, it's about really an approach to come up with general guiding principles. That'll certainly be an advantage for people who are trying to provide more autonomy throughout the organization. But I think Rendan Hui is really a philosophy of transforming more than just guiding principles. It relies on guiding principles to succeed, but it's much bigger than that, much broader than that in terms of its application.
Yeah, I think I would agree. So I'm looking at the Shingo model right now, and I think my own experience from, comparing different models. I mean, I've been looking at the Google model, the Tesla model, the Lean, the Toyota, and Shingo. I think we can see similarities between all those models. And that is why we talk usually about meta principles, that if you would put all those models next to each other, you would actually find that they are converging to a certain set of common principles. What Rendan Hui maybe could benefit doing is that they give a clear answer on a strategic focus on how the organization design should look like, the guideline for compensation model design. It gives you maybe one more direction on one more level down. That maybe could complement and help out as well. Great question. We have Frank. Question to everyone. Thanks for sharing your experience about that work. Can you please give concrete example of how digital tools, technology platform help you to do what you say? Thanks in advance. Okay, I can just start say, Frank, that usually most of those organizations that do transformation, they don't talk about the digital tools or technologies as per se, or they usually don't start with that. That is something that is enabling the transformation, which is more of a management innovation. But anyone that would like to take this on, any digital tools, platforms, I mean, for sure, Rendan Hui is built on AI, big data analytics, sensor technology. I mean, you name it, right? It's all based on internet technology. So it's there, but they rarely talk about it. So anyone that would like to hint on digital tools, technology platforms specifically? I can also say Frank had another question. Eric, I know you can take this too. He also said, I heard you say that everyone is a co-creator now. Can you please give concrete example of that? Okay, so digital platforms and everyone is a co-creator. An example. Okay, Henrik, you want to start on digital platforms?
I can try to give it a go. Before the role I have now, I was working with our digital transformation of Ericsson's PLM system. So I can very much relate to the question, and you very often see that it's either or. Either you talk about digital transformation or you talk about a company transformation. And I would put it like this, that it probably have to be both in combination. But on the digital part, I mean, giving examples is, if you want to get the new way of working implemented, I think it's very much about how you create the right type of experience for the people that works in the business flow, to get the things we want to achieve from an overall transformation perspective. For example, we want to work much more directly into an ecosystem. We want to work much closer with our customers. And here the digital tools are definitely an enabler for that. I mean, from Ericsson's side, we look into, okay, how do we deploy our software in our customers' networks automatically, instantly, for example. So when we talk about customer experience, when we talk about working with ecosystems, the digital tools are definitely an enabler for achieving that in a way that makes it, we say, low effort. I think that's the whole point here. You can achieve a lot of this without digitalization, but then it requires a lot of resources, and of course there's a risk for a lot of faults to happen as you rely on manual work. So the whole digitalization, automation is there to make sure that you actually get the flow in place, and make sure that you get the good experience that you want your customer to have in place as well. So that's kind of how I see it. From our side, we are looking into, as I said, how do we deploy our software? We are very much working with the cloud native type of development paradigms, which kind of is based on that. Then we look in how do we can use simulation in a much larger degree, which is based on, as you say, like AI, for example, and machine learning. And then, as I said, the whole way we digitalize our information handling, coming from R&D throughout the organization out to the customers, how we sell, how do we use the data, the value we create data-wise when we develop our products, how do we make those available and useful for the rest of the, say, downstream organization.
Yeah, and I can see that Antonio is really ready to jump in here, because I know that, I mean, a philosophy like zero distance to the user, where you are going to touch base with every single user every day. I mean, compared to how you did it before, selling a washing machine and then a next one 15 years later, it demands digital technology, of course. Antonio, do you want to say anything there?
You just said it. It is about that. It is about it's just getting rid of the gap in between you and the end user, creating value. Yeah, the digital tools are tools, and that enables you. So on the sense of zero distance, on the sense of what we call the contracts, which is like the way we establish relationship with our partners internally and externally on the ecosystems, making sure that the ground rules and the results are well articulated and registered and followed through. So there are many reasons why we need to leverage on technology. So the technology is not the center of the discussion. It's the enabler for you to achieve and reach zero distance, which connects to the next question that was also asked on the co-creation thing, which is the new word that we are all using. Sometimes it's a little bit empty because no one explained what we mean by co-creation. So when we reduce the distance between the end user and the company, and which is the zero distance piece, you become one. Co-creation is basically designing something not from the corner office or the dark space of the engineers. is co-designed with the end user. And I have a good example. I'll take 10 seconds to explain it. We just launched, and we were developing for a year almost, a machine, an artifact to grow mushrooms. And that thing was developed by one of the engineers and co-created with close to 7,000 end users who were providing input to the different attempts. And we now have a product who was launched in Indiegogo and very successfully. So this is the kind of thing that we are trying to do to make sure that we don't offer the consumers things that they don't care about. And then we need to spend, I don't know how many millions of dollars convincing them that they need it. It's quite the opposite. It's creating them with them and helping them to help us to create what makes sense for them.
Right. And yeah, Josh.
Yeah, I just want to add to that from a different perspective with the co-creation. I meant it in the way, or want to give a different perspective in co-creating the transformation. So my experience, for example, was when we started the transformation, we asked for volunteers to drive the change with us. And I think that's also not a new thing. So you want to have volunteers to support. You want to have a good mix of hierarchy, non-hierarchy, of senior people, of junior people involved in the process. But I think what is new there is, because you don't exactly know when you will reach certain things and the work packages that need to be done, you're actually looking in very empty phases when you say, we know where we know what we want to change, but we don't know where we end up. And we need you guys to co-create this transformation together with us. You look at, if you have a group of corporate guys in a room, you look at very stunned faces at the beginning because they don't believe it. They ask me for volunteering up. I really want to drive it together with them, but they have no clue. There are no work packages defined. I don't know what to do. They ask me, I should come up with a solution. And that's a challenging question to ask. And it takes a while until it sinks. And you need to be really you need to be really bold to say, no, there is no answer. We need you guys. And then after a couple of weeks, couple of meetings, they realize, well, actually, I really can co-create. They listen to me. It's not like that everything that I say will be implemented. It needs to be on a consent, but that's just the amazing thing when I speak about co-creating transformational stuff at organizations.
So we have, if we go to the other side from digital, we had a question about, let's see. So from David here, how is the individual human talent visualized within transformation and fit into these systems? Individual human talent visualized.
Let me try to answer, and perhaps hopefully I get it right. When you start something like that, you look at the org chart, you look at key experts, and you think these are the guys who are totally behind questioning everything and want to work in a new way. But actually, it's usually what I call the raw diamonds that you find in any organizations. Nobody sees them. They are there. They are big value contributors, but they don't have a platform yet to show their skills that are needed, to connect with the right people in the organization, to be respected and seen. These are not always the people who are leading. These are not always the people with the deep expertise. These are really the strong connectors. And I think these raw diamonds, it's your job in this transformation to make them visible, give them a perspective, and make them shine or grow. I think grow is more important. And I think these are your biggest supporters in questioning the status quo. These are the biggest supporters to give you surprises, positive surprises. And I think that's make them visible in whatever way is possible. It's kind of my answer to that one.
Right. And we also have questions about how do you develop the maturity of leaders, people, and processes required to take up a model like Ren and OE, especially in Western countries. Anyone that would like to go for that? The maturity of leaders, people, and processes. One question I would say in relation, Antonio.
Yeah, this is a real challenge because it is not true that when we first read Ren and Hui, we understand what it means. And then when we try to apply it, we feel very, very comfortable with it. We grew up in a society where hierarchy were important, bureaucracy was important, decision making, central decision making was the name of the game. And then there is something that comes up and say like, well, what you have learned and done over the last 50 years is no longer valid. So it's not easy for anyone who has been under these circumstances to swallow. What we have done is basically working through demonstration and help people to understand that they can be the change they want to see. There is no one will change things unless they do it, and it is in their hands to transform the complaints they have expressed over the last 30 years into solutions. And when we all discovered that this transformation was in our hands, that corporate was not going to do it for us, that unless we did it, it will happen. This is when everything opens up, and we discovered those raw jewels or diamonds, and we discovered those very vocal individuals finding their way and finding the space for them to offer ideas for transformation. So some of the main champions of our transformations are not millennials. Actually, they are baby boomers who are seeing in this transformation the opportunity to crown their career and deliver what they thought they wanted to do, but they couldn't because the systems were not there for them. So it's a fascinating question, and I'll dig deeper into that, because I want to learn more about what actually happened in people's minds when they realized that change was in their hands, even though they were trained not to initiate change, but also only to follow it. But it definitely is it's part of the journey, and it's one of the barriers, but also could be one of the enablers.
And isn't that the truth behind one of the beliefs behind at least Renan OE is that the people want to take responsibility. People, want to be an adult in a system. They are already mature, but they have to be released. They have to be set in a context, in a system that is assuming it, demanding it, and giving them the opportunities to do it. It's pretty fascinating, as you say, how people can change, right? From being a follower of instructions, taking instructions, to actually become entrepreneurial and come up with totally new own solution and execute it. We have one interesting question from Andreas, last one. How did you approach finding the right balance, timing between building the organization capability, transform, and executing the transformation itself? Can you parallelize these? And I from my side, I would say absolutely, you have to, because capability building is also by doing. I mean, the time for theoretical analyzing and planning for a year is gone, at least from my point of view. Benjamin, Professor Laker, do you want to push on that? Or any of Jochen or Antonio or Professor Fischer? 1 minute answer, because then I want you to just wrap it up, all of you.
Annika, my view is this is very experimental. It has to be iterative because you're trying and learning.
Right. Thank you. I think that is enough answer, actually. That's a great answer. It's a learning process. Any transformation process is a learning process. You have to start it and then continue it. And you might actually fail in some trials you do. And at the end, hopefully you succeed. So why should they take this course then, offered in June and forward now? 12 hours. Will they be able to develop their own toolbox after this, get lesson learned from you, getting a right mindset, be able to go home and present a story and convince their top executive to actually start it?
I wish I have had the opportunity to take this course before I joined GEA and work in this transformation. That have saved me time learning and understanding of the models. At the same time, will have given me the confidence that it is possible.
Agree. Nothing to add. Yeah.
Okay. Then any other comment? 1 second comment from Henrik, Bill Fisher. No? Okay. So then by that, I would like to thank you all for being part of this webinar. We have a number of other webinars coming up. If you want to go deeper into this specific topic of enterprise transformation, which is maybe one of the most complex phenomena you can do and you can take on as a responsibility if you are a transformation leader, please join us and join the community and share lesson learned with peers and with experts, both from the industry side and also from the academic side. I hope to see you. Use the link that is in the chat window if you want to register. We want to reach as many as possible, as our vision is to disseminate this knowledge to as many as possible. So the price is very, very friendly. Thank you for coming and see you soon.